We'll take a look at the GASB34 module. It's a Government Accounting Standards Board Statement 34. It's one of the ways the government has devised to help you manage your assets. We still work with a lot of counties that haven't adopted GASB34 yet and don't plan on to in the future, but I say that the majority of our cities, counties are running the GASB34. Some of them are running at county clerk level and using spreadsheets, and county clerk, city clerk level, and city auditor and county auditor. And others are involving the Road and Bridge or Public Works Department. So we have the GASB34 module. It's accessible here, or if you enter a G on the quickest menu. And basically in GASB34 it follows a two-pronged approach, either the depreciation approach where you take your capitalized assets and then you depreciate them out over their lifetime, or the modified approach is basically where you manage your assets, determine how much you need to spend on each asset during the fiscal year, and then track that spending against it. There are basically two steps in implementing the GASB34 module. One way of doing it is you can import data from your records in the Visual Road and Bridge directly into this module. It saves some keyboarding, but you will need other information added to each record, and generally that information is at the city, county, the clerk or auditor level. You can import, or if you enter the data manually, the first thing you would do is create your classes record for each individual class of assets. And generally in the Public Works Road Department area, the class would be infrastructure. The network would be the transportation systems, which essentially are all the different systems, subsystems that keep manage the transportation in your locale. And the subsystem, today we're going to take a look at just bridges. You probably would have another one which would be infrastructure, transportation, roads, infrastructure, transportations, could be signs, culverts, or however you do manage the GASB34. Once you set this up and then you collect the data, then you can see, and this is already pre-populated with some test data. This is our bridges in our this particular county setup. And the total historical cost at the cost value that was determined at the time the bridge was built, it's about $12.4 million worth of bridges, and they currently have accumulated depreciation $9.8 million. The current year depreciation is $150,000. Most of the assets are depreciated out, and I have a net book value of about $2.4 million. Once you set up the class that you're organizing, then you go back to browse, add, change, delete, and then you enter the records. We'll take a look at one of the records. Basically the bridge number, the layer is when you're maintaining assets. For instance, this bridge maybe it's 30 years old, and the initial cost of the asset goes in record 1, and then maybe 12 years later we did a major capitalization on it, resurfaced or redecked it, and that would be layer 2. So you keep track of each incremental asset spending layer. The layers are only the major spending, not the normal ongoing maintenance. A layer would be essentially something that would extend the life of that asset, and that generally falls into another layer adding to that asset. Basically the asset date, this bridge was built in 1972. This would be a location for its free-form field. Physical attributes could be the decking, square footing, or whatever particular attribute. The initial value for it was $143,887 to build it. If it has a salvage value, this would be the estimated percentage, like 2%, 3%, when it totally would be junked out. The asset life is 50 years, and your numbers will vary from this, of course. We also have a memo cost basis calculator, and this is only a rough estimating tool for getting a basic initial value. But you crank in the feet, the average width, if it's a bridge, the square footage, and the cost per square foot, the year it was built, and it'll give you a rough estimated cost. This is for looking back in history if you don't have that documentation to show what the asset actually cost. There's also the Federal Highway Administration costing index built in there. Generally, you would want to estimate the cost yourselves, because you know the overall material costs, labor costs, and everything in your particular locality better than these indexes. Once you do enter all the bridges or roads, and when you enter a particular asset, you select what class of asset it is. We just have the one to select right now, but so you can enter like any number of assets as long as you classify them by the classification that they are at the time. We'll take a look now at the depreciation approach. Basically, before running this utility, you always want to back up the data, and it's near instantaneous, so it is backed up with like an instant click. Now, to construct previous year's depreciation on all the assets, basically you have to do, because a lot of the times when you set this up initially, you won't have the 20-30 years previous depreciation calculated on an asset. So this utility will calculate that for you. Basically just check that, click construct, and you're in business. If you want to depreciate a particular, you can run this some assets under the depreciation model and some under the modified approach. And the way you determine that is by double-clicking on this. And if we're going to depreciate our assets, our bridges, we check this box, click OK, and then you're ready to calculate it. It goes real fast. I think there's 150 bridges in there or something. B020-2. And then it will show the accumulated assets. Now this particular asset didn't get any current year accumulated depreciation because it was built in 1953 and it had a 50-year life. So essentially in 2003 we had totally depreciated this asset out. So at this point it's a net book value of 0, even though it probably is still a functioning bridge. So the modified approach works a little differently. In the modified, we would select our asset grouping, and then we set up the what percent of the book value cost do you forecast you need to spend on this particular asset grouping during this year. And this is as a percent, like 5%, 2%. In other words, if you look at all your bridges and you have $12 million worth of bridges, and you think you're going to spend, $600,000 to maintain the bridges during the year, then the asset spending would be around 5%. And the second field is what is the forecasted inflation factor during the forecast year. Right now, inflation is around 2%, so you'd crank in 2% there. What that does is inflate this number by whatever percent this is. Once you set up your parameters, then you update asset spending, and then you can audit and maintain your spending forecast. So now let's take a look at, we haven't clicked over to where we're doing it by modified, but we'll take a look at the reports, the depreciation approach, and asset detail. This is just a free-form field. You enter whatever you'd want on the header of the report. And the header of the report is here, so whatever you want to show there is what you'd enter in that little pop-up box. Basically it lists all your bridges. Now This is the B049 1 and 2. This is layer 2 of the added to that bridge. It was built in '72, and then in 2008 we added some more improvements to it to prolong its life. And the report then does a total on the end. And you get all your totals across there. Other reports and reporting, they're by depreciation report. You can look at any individual bridge or group of bridges by running a asset group summary. The modified approach then does similar reporting, but it looks at the assets you're maintaining in the modified approach mode. So the help screens, the better help screens are really under help and then help from the top, and then just enter GASB here and click on list topics, and then we double click on the topic, and then it gets us on over into this area. This screen's also available directly from the GASB module, but we went to this screen because it goes into further explanations of the different attributes and objects on the record. And you can click here and it'll go down to salvage value and explain that. The help screens with the search capability gives you kind of a real quick way of looking up almost anything on any record or any help for any field or object in the system. So that pretty much covers the GASB34 module. If you have questions, give us a call or email. And next week we're going to take a look at the help systems. We have 8 levels of help built in the system on it.